Youssef, for joining me today. To kick us off, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm Youssef. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Flagship. In a nutshell, Flagship is an e-commerce platform. We enable creators and tastemakers to set up online businesses where they can feature their favorite products. Prior to this, I spent 6 years at Instagram, where I was most recently a director for all of the ads and commerce teams on the data science side.
Awesome overview. And when you were first recruiting for your job at Instagram, you told a story of Sanchan, who was the head of product for the Instagram for Business team at the time, and he made a compelling pitch to you for Instagram and why it would become the place where people would buy online from businesses. What do you remember from that conversation, and what made his pitch so compelling?
Oh man, you're throwing me way back. Yeah, I think there are a few elements of that pitch, but before we get into the pitch, I think it's important to baseline the context. So that was really my first job, and like many people looking for their first job, I was looking to sort of make my mark or like start understanding how to make impact in the world. And I remember at the time I had just joined Facebook, and I was talking to a few teams. One of them was the Facebook Marketplace team. It was just getting started at the time. One of them was DPA, Dynamic Ads. Very interesting business. Actually, at some point, it became 30% of Facebook's revenue. And one of them was the Instagram business team. And I think when I was looking at all of these teams, one thing I was trying to understand is what are the drivers of the decision? What should I care about? And really, it came down to three things. The first one was, is there a future here? Is this going to be big? Is this going to be impactful? And that's really the objective analysis of the team, the objective analysis of any company, any product. You should be looking at it and thinking, hey, like, is this going to go somewhere? The second element was the people. You mentioned Sunshine. Sunshine was honestly a great partner. And as soon as I met him, I was like, hey, this is someone I'm going to learn a lot from. And the third one was mission alignment. Do I deeply, genuinely care about this? And I think that's where the Instagram business team truly stood out for me. From my background, like my father owns a small business. I lived all my childhood sort of living at the rhythm of his business. When the business does well, like we were all happy. When the business doesn't, we were all kind of sad. And so like I made it a little bit of my life's mission to help people through that journey. And the Instagram business team felt like the right place for me to do that at the time. And in fact, that's what leads me to Flagship today. It's sort of the same mission all over. Now, going back to the pitch, I think a good pitch in general from a hiring manager or like someone hiring for a team, to me, it really has to be very upfront about the goods and the bads. What are the sacrifices you're going to make, and why the mission matters? Because what's more important than selling the person, what's more important than like, hey, this is going to be huge, is this person going to be excited about working in it? And for better or worse, Sunshine was very clear that it's going to be a lot of work. But guess what? Because I was really excited about it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in, because that's what I was looking for. But that, I think, in my opinion, that's what makes a really good pitch for a hiring manager.
Cool. And was Sanchan your manager at Instagram?
No. So Sanchan was the head of product of that team, and he actually left a few years later. But my manager was named Jenny Romanek. She's now the VP of data science and data engineering at Instagram. I worked with her for all my time there, pretty much.
And how would you describe her as a manager?
Oh, yeah, Jenny is the best. Obviously, I'm biased because I learned everything in management from Jenny. She's an incredible manager. And, when I think about what's a good manager, and at least what I try to hold myself accountable to is good management is a practice that has as a goal to enable people to achieve their greatest potential. That's how I think about people management in general. Now, if you're a leader of a team, management is a component of your job, but it's not actually the entire job. And that's a confusion that some people have between management and leaders. But in reality, if your goal is to be a good manager to a team, then you have to help them grow. You have to help them crush it. And that really comes down to helping them shoot very high. they need to have goals that are far above what they think they can achieve. And then second, you need to empower them to achieve those goals. And what that means is that sometimes that's coaching, sometimes that's going on the ground and helping someone, with a problem and showing them how to solve it. Sometimes it's removing roadblocks and, getting people out of the way so that they can execute. And sometimes it's giving them an opportunity to fail. And it's okay if they fail. You have to have their back if they're doing their best work. So I think empowerment is the second big thing. And the third thing is holding people accountable. I think it's very easy to shoot very high and like try, and well, if it doesn't work, move on. I think good managers know how to hold people accountable. And holding people accountable doesn't need to be adversarial. It's not like, hey, you got to do this or you get fired, or you got to do this to get promoted. I think that kind of exchange is actually very unhealthy. What's really healthy is to align. If the report and the manager are aligned on the goal, it's totally fine if every week they check in and they're like, how are we doing on that goal? And that accountability is actually something that managers are very well equipped to do, that because they sit outside, right? Like, and you need sometimes a third party to observe the trend to actually give you feedback and give you and help you hold yourself accountable.
You've talked about the power of checkpoints in your career and just understanding like where you're progressing and where you're not. For the audience who maybe wants to start this for their own careers, I'm kind of curious, like, what were your checkpoints and how did you structure them?
Like on my career specifically, or overall, sort of like how do we think about checkpoints?
Overall, maybe how you think about checkpoints.
Yeah. I think so. When people think about management, I think there's a tendency. I was actually catching up with one of my former reports last week, and she was asking me, hey, what were the best practices? And like, the team used to run a certain way, and like, I'm trying to make sure that my team runs in a similar way. What are all these best practices and processes you had in place? And I actually think, people tend to overemphasize processes and like how to, like, oh, we're weekly or bi-weekly, and here's a template. I actually think all of that has its place, and it can be useful, but it can lock you into a process that sometimes doesn't have a place to live, if that makes sense. So that's why a lot of people actually don't like working in a big company. Sometimes it's too over processed. But in practice, the way I think about checkpoints, at least for myself, is regardless of how I achieve it, and we can get to like specifics, but it has to abide by two things, two clear principles. The first one is I need to set up goals that are achievable. That are measurable. I need to be able to measure whether I'm succeeding or not. And maybe I'm too much of a data scientist by training, but if I cannot measure it, I don't know if I succeeded or not. I think that's really a practice of defining clear goals. And the second one is, intellectual honesty. I have to be able to look back and say, hey, did I achieve this goal, or maybe I haven't? And if I haven't, maybe the goal was too aggressive, or maybe I need to do better, right? So on my personal life, actually, what I tend to do is I have I check in with myself twice a year for my career. I see what I'm doing. Am I happy? Am I not happy? Am I growing? Am I not growing? Like, that's one of the reasons why I ended up leaving a job that I loved at Instagram, is that I looked back and I was like, hey, I'm not actually growing at the same rate as I wanted to grow. And I felt like I still had a lot to learn. And that was the trigger. Similarly, now I actually have a much shorter feedback loop where I'm trying to get better at working out more often, because I lost a lot of my habits when I started a company, and it's really sad to see. But now I'm failing, and so like every couple of weeks now I check in. I'm like, how many times did I work out in the last week? So it really depends on what the goal is. But first you define the goal, then you define the structure to hold yourself accountable to the goal.
You hired lots of people throughout your career. Kind of curious, like, what questions you like to ask during interviews, and what are you looking for?
Yeah. Hiring people from different functions leads to very different questions. Hiring an engineer can, like, from a skill set perspective, is very different than hiring like a marketing person, for example. But I think there are common threads. And personally, this is what, like, if you ask anyone at Flagship today, like, I interviewed every single person. And I will continue to do that, because this is like the common thread that I look for is the following. To define whether the person will be successful, at least from my view, I look for three things. First thing is, Can this person work very hard? I don't think anybody can achieve great things if they don't work very hard. I think working hard is a prerequisite. It's not a like, you know, you can't do great things unless if you work hard. And that's a lesson that you learn when you see people. My little brother was national champion in tennis. When you see how hard he had to work to do that, how much commitment, how much effort goes into it, you realize that to achieve great potential, you actually need to work hard, regardless of where your starting point. Doesn't mean that everyone has to work 12-hour days, but you know, like if the team needs you to ramp up at some point, if there's an occasion that you need to rise to, will this person be able to rise to that occasion? Do they have that capacity? That's number one. Number two is this person passionate? They don't need to be passionate about the same things, obviously. They don't have to be passionate about the mission, but sometimes people are passionate about the system, but sometimes people are passionate about the problem. Sometimes people are passionate about the customer. It doesn't really matter for me. Like what I try to understand is there a passion in there? Is there something that will kind of get them excited to be thinking about this when they're on a hike during the weekend? Or is this going to be a 9-to-5 job, and like unless if they have some high goals that they're trying to hit at that specific moment in time, they're going to stop working on it. And the third thing is, are they team players? You know, this is a lesson that I learned the hard way in management. Sometimes you have strong contributors, individual contributors who are incredible at their jobs, but they can have negative impact on everyone around them, and they can pull the entire team down. I think oftentimes that's actually hidden from management, and most managers shy away from, you know, getting rid of these people. I learned that I shouldn't, because if you do, I actually think the environment can become very toxic very fast. So I'd rather spend a little bit longer looking for the right person than having a strong contributor who does not build a good culture around them. I think culture trumps individual contributors anytime.
And when you're evaluating people internally for promotions, what do you look for? And like, why do you think some people get promoted over others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm gonna sound like such a Facebooker right now. The only thing I really look for is impact. Can this person drive a lot of impact? Are they driving a lot of impact actively? And you know, sometimes people like they get upset because they're like, oh yeah, that person has a lot of visibility and whatnot. I actually don't think any of that matters. It's actually the role of the management to make sure that the people who are getting promoted in any organization are the ones who are driving the most. And I think it should actually be pretty visible, because you're trying to create an environment where some sort of evolutionary environment where there are examples that everyone wants to follow, and that example should be based on impact. Does that make sense? Like, or should I elaborate more on what that means?
That makes sense. And you kind of talked a little bit about like your hiring and what you look for. And I know in the past you've talked about that like retention should be a bigger key to this because of just all the compounding effects of teams working together over long periods of time. And you just touched on like the culture. Like, what are some tactical things that leaders can be doing to just ensure you retain people and teams together over long periods of time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's actually one of the pieces that are most debated, I would say, in management circles in general. Like, for example, whenever like there's a senior position that opens up, like, do you hire someone new who comes in with loads of experiences, who can bring in like knowledge that you don't have on the team, or do you promote internally and like take a bet on someone internal? Different people fall on different parts of that spectrum, and I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I personally, what I can tell you is like my management style in general is far more on the latter. I tend to bet a lot on internal talent. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason is what you just described, which is, you know, if you do that, then retention is not guaranteed, but like far stronger, because people see a path forward. I fundamentally believe that most people around are looking to grow. Most people around, especially ambitious people, what they're looking for is, I want to build something great and I want to grow on the way. If you can provide those two things well and effectively on an ongoing basis, retention tends to be high, at least among the top performers, because you need to be the one providing that path. I think what I held when I was at Instagram, I think now I have it a lot less because Flagship is pretty small by design. But when I was at Instagram, our team was reasonably large. We were, I think by the time I left, it was around 40 people or so. And what I held every manager on the team accountable for is every IC should have a path forward. Everyone should know. I don't care if it's written in a template. I don't care if like there's like a plan to get them from a level to the next, because that's the easy part. The hard part is deeply understanding what that person is shooting for. What do they care about? And do they have a path to actually get what they care about? Because let's not lie about it. They're not going to stay there forever. But your goal is to provide them the best environment for them to stay and be productive. If you did your job well hiring, then what you're really aiming for is like growing people at an exponential rate. And to do that, you need to have a clear idea on like what that path looks like for growth.
So you worked at Instagram for 6 years. You mentioned you loved working there, but you ended up leaving to start your own company, Flagship. Kind of curious, like what framework or advice would you share for people evaluating big tech versus joining a startup versus starting your own company?
I think it's really hard to generalize. Honestly, like I get that question often, but it's really difficult to generalize. I can maybe like speak to like what are decision factors that they come into play. I think first of all, I think people are fascinated by risk in general. I think there's this tendency of like the founders are the best and like it's great and I actually think it's not exactly accurate. I think being a founder can be really hard too, but I also think it's a game that biases towards people who have the opportunity to afford it. Actually, I mean, I don't think I was excited about starting a company when I was in grad school too, but honestly, I couldn't afford it. Like that's the reality. Like I am an immigrant in this country, and I wanted to be with my now wife Ines, and like for her to come, I needed to guarantee some path for immigration papers and all of that, and it's surprisingly hard. If I don't know if I think you're from here, but like if you're not, like you'd understand all the H-1B and stuff. It's really difficult. And also Tunisia, my home country, is actually going through an economic crisis, so I needed to be there for my parents financially. They needed it. So for me, it came down to what are the constraints I operate under, and I think most people out there have a certain amount of constraints they're operating under. And so based on those constraints, what are you optimizing for? And then you can figure out your own path. For me, that came out after Instagram. Again, to your point, I love my time at Instagram. I would love to like spend more time there if time was infinite. If I did not have a finite amount of time on this planet, I would probably have stayed longer because I was just having a great time. Everyone was great. The people were amazing. I loved Jenny. I loved Ashley. I loved everyone there. But at the same time, to my point earlier, like, everyone is looking for growth. And honestly, after 6 years, by all measures at Facebook or at Meta, sorry, I always say Facebook, but I mean Meta, I had growth left. As in, I had a few promotions that I could get probably in the next few years, and I think comp would continue to go up, and I think, it would have been great. Like, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it. But at the same time, I looked at myself, like, as I told you earlier, like every 6 months or so, I look back at myself and I was like, well, am I growing as fast? Am I learning? Am I being stretched? And the answer was no. The reality is, like, I knew what I was doing. I was part of the team that helped monetize stories, and now it was time for Reels. I don't know if you saw the earnings call yesterday or 2 days ago, but Reels monetizes very well now. And it's the same team. And so, like, you go through these periods in your life where you accelerate, where it stretches you out, and then it slows down, and then it stretches you out, it slows down. When you're spending too long in one place and you're not being stretched out, then you should ask yourself the question, am I in the right place right now? If I look back 50 years from now at this period of my life, will I regret not having done something else? I think Jeff Bezos calls this the regret minimization framework, or the regret minimization objective function. I don't know how he called it, but I think it's true. I think I looked at myself and I was like, well, will I regret I was like, yeah, let's just do something. And so that's when I started looking into, okay, what's my mission in life? What do I really care about? And that's kicked off the journey to what is now Flagship.
And then for job seekers looking at startups, I guess like how would you identify a good startup to work for?
Yeah, I think so. One thing to understand about the startup ecosystem is that it's extremely opaque. It's not like the public markets. So, for example, Flagship has been around for a year and a half. I bet you have no idea what our metrics look like. There's no way for you to know because they're not public. We don't share them, right? We don't have an obligation to share. We do not want to share until we feel ready. And so I think if someone is interested in going into startups, I would tell them, stay off of your computer. Don't go on Google search and Glassdoor search. Just go talk to people. Mm-hmm. This is the only way to know. It takes longer because it's not as efficient, right? Like there is no, S1 to look at and there's no earnings calls to listen to. It's a little bit more complicated to find something you're really excited about. But the reality is like the best information, the rough diamonds exist in the community. Like if someone is really interested in, I don't know, healthcare, what are the top VCs in healthcare? Start there. VCs love to talk to everyone because, their job is to know everything and everyone. So yeah. I would start by building a network and by joining the community and find these proxies. VCs are a good proxy. Typically, like if someone is backed by a good VC, like typically there's a story there. So and they're happy to make intros. So that's where I would start. I would start by looking into the communities and trying to dive deep. What are the real problems? Like if you tell me today you're interested in looking at ads, I would tell you, well, look at privacy. What's going on in privacy? Privacy has been one of the biggest tectonic shifts in ads in the last 6 years. So what's going on there? Who is going to win that race? Who is going to win the race of advertising when there are no more cookies in the world? So I think there are people are developed expertises in these areas. And the more you talk to people, the more you get that view of what will really make a big change in the next few years.
Cool. Love that. Yeah, I think not a lot of information on startups, and the only way to find out is by talking to people who give you more information, and then you can just get more data points, and you can use that to decide where you want to end up. So love that. And then for people who are excited to maybe start a company down the road, I was curious, if there's anything that you think that they should be doing to kind of prepare themselves for that, what skills should they work on? What network should they develop? What environment should they place themselves in? How would you think about people who want to prepare to start a company down the road?
Yeah, that's a good question, and something I had to reflect on because my time at Instagram, when I started, I was really on the builder side. We were building a lot of small teams, and then at some point I moved to management and org leadership, and that's actually a little less applicable to starting a company. There are some parts that are, but most of now most of my work looks a lot more like my first years at Instagram than my latter years. And so I think the main thing for me is if you're thinking about joining a small company or starting one, what you want to be is you want to be a builder. You want to be someone who thinks from first principles. You want to be someone who, if you're an engineer, for example, what you really don't want to do is going into a very established team working on iterating over algorithms or over specific UXs based on very strong design systems that are already in place. What you want to do is build a design system. So really you want to go to, if you're going to a big company because that's what you need to do for whatever reason, then looking for teams that are earlier in their life cycles, that have just started or that have recently started, is actually far more beneficial than going to an established team. If you're open to startups, then the earlier the better. If your goal is to start a company, you want to go the earliest possible stage because you want to be part of the setting the foundation upon which a company is going to get built, because that's going to teach you how to build foundations down the line. Turns out optimizing, the Instagram ad system and building Flagship is actually pretty different.
You've been building Flagship now just for under 2 years. Reflecting on your own journey, I guess what have been your biggest learnings?
That is really hard out there. Just joking. Yeah, it is actually really hard. But I think probably the thing that shocked me the most, and I had a good adjustment period, is when you work at a big company, especially a cool one like Instagram, you come with the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. If you reach out to anyone, honestly, they reply. Whether that's a candidate, whether that's a customer, whether that's a brand, you just reach out to anyone and tell them, hey, I'm a director at Instagram. I want to help you with this. Everyone will reply because you come in with this huge baggage that is Instagram. When you leave Instagram, it doesn't matter if you're ex-Instagram or not. You're a nobody. You are on the same line as everyone else. And what I didn't realize is how much everyone gets pitches all the time. I didn't realize it was like that. And so my first few months was a lot of hustle. But like what I was trying to do is really kind of like explain to people what we're trying to do and have design partners. And, whenever you hop on a call with someone and you tell them everything that you've accomplished and a lot of the people I work with, they're using the tools that I helped build. So like I'm very familiar with a lot of their use cases and how they're using Instagram. But getting past that first line is actually much harder than I thought it would be. And I think what it really comes down to is you have to earn the right for people to care about you. And that I think is actually the biggest learning for me. I think the reality is when you join a company like Instagram has earned that right. Kevin Systrom made it earn that right a long time ago. And when I join Instagram and when I build and when I reach out to people, well, I'm surfing on the effort of Kevin Systrom. But building that from scratch is really difficult. So that's why I mentioned, if someone is thinking about starting a company, go in a really early stage, we'll show you how people are able to do it. And I think now Flagship is starting to actually have a name, even though we're still pretty hidden. We're not trying, but like people come sometimes and tell us, oh, I've seen Flagship everywhere. Not many people, but few people say that. So it is starting, but it did take us, like we launched, 6 months ago? Like our first stores. So like it did take a few months of like real hustle to actually get there and about 1.5 years of work.
I love that. Like earn the right for people to care about you. Would love to hear more just like how you actually go about doing that. Is that just like really understanding customer needs and building a product that serves them? Or I guess like how would you actually frame that to someone who's trying to do that for their own company?
I think for me, it came actually first and foremost from happy customers. Mm-hmm. The number one way we get brands, the number one way we get creators is through the network, is by doing good work. And, there are different ways you can do that. I think I'm wired in a very Facebook-like way, whereby I always look for K factors. I always look for like ways to make my network grow by itself, which is how Instagram grew and how Facebook grew. In reality, I think there are different people who do it differently. I know some founders who are very successful, for example, at building an image for themselves. And if you stand out as a thought leader in that ecosystem, then people look up to you, and that will translate to your company. In fact, that's feedback that I got as a founder. Hey, you should be more visible. Hey, you should be going out and talking more about ads and about like how it's evolving and about like influencer marketing and what you're seeing as the difference. But honestly, it comes down to prioritization too. Do I have time to do that? Honestly, like after this call, I'm going to go back to building. I'm going to go back to coding. So it's just a matter of like, where is the best time to allocate? And you have to earn it somehow. How you earn it is a little bit dependent on who are your customers. Are you trying to go SMB or are you trying to go enterprise is actually a big question. Because if you're going enterprise, then you can have a sales force. If you're going SMB, you can't. So you have to be a little bit more creative about how to earn that right at scale.
Earlier in this conversation, you talked about how people are sort of fascinated with risk. I am as well, because I've heard a lot of career advice around like when you should take risks in your careers. So I'm kind of curious, like, what's your take on like risk? Like, how do you think about risk tolerance as it relates to one's career, and when should you take risk in your career? And maybe you kind of already touched on this about looking at your constraints and deciding based on that.
Yeah, I think there is a real fascination. I think the general how do I call it? The common wisdom, or I think in French called the common wisdom. I don't know how it is in English, but it is about like taking risks while you're younger, right? Yeah. Like everyone is like, oh yeah, you're young, you can afford it. Like because you can afford it, you should probably do it now because maybe later you won't be able to, right? In practice, though, I do think it kind of depends on the person's risk tolerance levels. And risk tolerance, I think being more risk tolerant is not necessarily better. I think there is like this, founders are the best. Not true. Honestly, I've done a bit of both, and the jury's still out. what's better? But I think like identifying one's constraints is where I would actually start. You don't want to blame yourself. You don't want to be in a position where you're being dictated by what society does, because ultimately we're very mimicry driven individuals. Like we are super mimicry driven. We like to say this is how I think about the world and whatnot. Most of the time you're just thinking whatever like the 5 people you spend most time with are thinking. And whether that's starting a company or not, or whether that's what's happening in in the economy, it's all driven by that in the end. So I think understanding one's honest constraints and being honest with yourself is where I would start. Once you identify your own constraints, then it's a matter of like what will get you excited to wake up in the morning. And if you do something that keeps you really excited every day, you're stretching, you're growing, you're excited. Whether it's starting a company or working somewhere, it actually doesn't really matter. That's how I would think about it. I think I have to call it out because I find that at least in the founder space, like the founders that I hang out with, I think there is a little bit of, on the outside, there's this perception that you have to take a lot of risk all the time. In reality, not everyone can afford it, and I think we should be open to that as a society, as opposed to like trying to drive everyone down the same funnel.
Yeah, makes sense. And then last question, because I know you want to get back to building. If you want to have a meaningful career, what is the one thing you think you must get right?
I have to reflect a lot on this one recently, because my wife was switching roles and she had a lot of offers and she was really thinking about it. And we're trying to figure out a framework of like how to best think about, okay, you want to have a meaningful career. Like what are the few things that are most important for you to have it? And I think where we converged was, you want to be in a position where what you're working on is growing and that you're being better. An example is, you want to be working on a startup that has a lot of potential, where people are making bets. As a founder, you want investors to bet on you. You want people to bet on you. Like ultimately, like it is about people taking risks with you. Like every person who joined Flagship is taking a risk, honestly, on me and on my co-founders. Like, there isn't, it's not like a very established business where you can read the numbers, right? Like there is a lot of trust that has to go through. Similarly, if you're going to join a company, is that company growing? Is that space growing? Is that product growing? Is there potential? Is there somewhere where it can go? And are people going to bet on you? The combination of those two things, you'd be surprised by how much the combinations of those two things really compounds. Because let's take it the other way around. Imagine something is growing, but nobody's betting on you. Well, you're stuck. Because like, for example, if they keep on hiring above you, right? Like what you end up doing is like, you're in a great company that's growing, but you're not growing as an individual within it. Yeah. And the other way around also it doesn't really work. Like if you're in an environment that is not growing by itself, but people are betting aggressively on you, then everything is zero sum. Because when the environment is not growing, if you are taking a position, it means that someone else is not taking it. And that creates actually pretty adversarial environments. So I think I was lucky when I started my career to be in a place that was growing a lot. The Instagram business side grew a lot during my time. And frankly, I had incredible mentors in management. You mentioned Sunshine earlier, Jenny, there's also Vishal and Ashley. There's a lot of people who actually took bets on me. And I think the combination of those two things can allow you to actually grow really, really fast.
Cool. Great way to finish. Thank you so much, Youssef, for joining me today.
Of course. Well, thank you for having me.